Okay, so picture this. You're finally having those conversations with colleagues worldwide. You're navigating a business trip abroad, or maybe you're just finally enjoying those movies without subtitles.
It's the dream.
It is, being fluent in English as an adult. But how realistic is that goal? That's what we're diving into today. Can you really become fluent in English later in life?
Yeah, it's a question we get a lot. And honestly, there's this misconception that fluency is this exclusive club, right? Like you have to have started young. And the good news is that's just not true.
That is reassuring. So it's not a lost cause for those of us who are a little bit older. But I think it's fair to say that adults and kids learn pretty differently. We're juggling jobs, families, maybe a bit of existential dread on a Tuesday.
Tuesdays, am I right?
So with all that, how do we actually tap into that inner polyglot?
You're hitting on a really important point, which is that adult learners, we face a unique set of circumstances. But the cool thing is we also come with some serious advantages. Like, think about how adults approach learning in general. We set goals, we might even make a study plan, and we're not afraid to look at our progress and adjust, right? We're strategic.
That's so true. I remember trying to learn new languages when I was younger, and it did feel like I was just kind of along for the ride. Now I'm much more intentional with how I approach learning anything new, really.
Exactly. And that intentionality is gold. Because we don't just passively absorb information like kids often do, we actively engage with it. And on top of that, there's motivation. Adults usually have a really specific reason why they're learning English. Could be career advancement, travel opportunities, connecting with people from different cultures. That drive is powerful.
Yeah, for adults, it's not about just passing a test. It's about achieving something that really matters to you.
100%.
But I have to ask, even with the best intentions and a totally packed schedule, isn't there this sense that our brains just aren't as flexible as they used to be?
If you're enjoying this podcast, don't forget to like the video. Share it with friends who might find it helpful. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss our next video. Let us know in the comments what topic you'd like to hear.
That whole youthful brain plasticity thing.
Oh, the plasticity. It comes up all the time. And yeah, it refers to the brain's ability to change and adapt when you're younger. But here's the thing. While we might not have that same level of plasticity as, say, a 5-year-old, adult brains are definitely not static. We're constantly forming new neural pathways throughout our lives, especially when we challenge ourselves with new skills like language learning.
So it's not that we can't learn, it's just that we might be learning a bit differently than we did when we were kids.
Exactly. And the cognitive skills we develop as adults, things like critical thinking, problem solving, those are actually super helpful for language learning. Think about it. We can grasp complex grammar. We see those nuances in sentence structure, and we can make connections between concepts much more easily.
It's almost like our adult brains are kind of uniquely wired for this. We're not just mimicking sounds, we're deciphering a code.
Well, I love that. It's like cracking the system. That's exactly what we're doing.
Yeah.
And honestly, that ability to analyze, think strategically, connect the dots, that's huge in the language learning journey. We're not just memorizing lists of vocabulary, we're building a whole framework for understanding how English works.
Okay, this is actually giving me a whole new perspective. It's not about trying to get back some kind of lost youthful ability. It's about leveraging the strengths that we have as adult learners.
Yes.
Yes.
And those strengths.
Yeah.
That's actually what allows adults to achieve fluency in a way that's often more intentional, more meaningful, and, dare I say, even enjoyable.
Okay, I'm feeling, cautiously optimistic, but I think we'd be remiss if we didn't acknowledge the elephant in the room. Or maybe it's more like that awkward silence when you're trying to string a sentence together in another language.
You're talking about the fear of making mistakes.
Yes. It can be such a barrier, especially as adults. There's this pressure to be competent, to be articulate, and then suddenly I feel like I'm back in middle school Spanish class.
Oh, it's so common though, because as adults we've spent years, right, cultivating this identity as being good communicators in our native languages.
Yeah.
So the idea of making mistakes, of not being understood, it's almost like a threat to our credibility or something.
Yeah, it's like all eyes are on you, analyzing every word, every inflection. And let me tell you, my internal critic, super harsh grading system, holds grammar competitions. It's intense.
I hear you. But what if we tried to see those mistakes a little differently? What if instead of thinking of them as failures, we thought of them as feedback?
Okay, I like where you're going with this reframing. Tell me more.
Okay, so imagine this. You're learning a new sport, right? Let's say tennis. You're not going to be perfect right away, are you?
Definitely not.
You're going to hit the ball out of bounds, miss serves, get frustrated, all that. But each one of those, quote, mistakes, those are actually opportunities to adjust your grip, maybe refine your swing, just improve your technique overall.
It's about the process, not just the end goal.
Exactly. Language learning is the same. Every time we stumble over a word, mispronounce something, or mix up the grammar, it's information. It's our brain saying, hey, pay attention to this. We need to work on this a bit more.
So it's less about avoiding making mistakes and more about embracing those mistakes as opportunities to actually get better.
Yes, 100%. And remember, even the most fluent speakers, they make mistakes. It's part of being human. It's part of using language in a dynamic way.
I'm so glad to hear that because it's easy to get caught up in this pursuit of perfection and it can feel impossible, especially when you're first starting out.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why I think it's so important to celebrate even those small victories along the way, right? Like, did you successfully order your coffee in English? Huge. Did you generally understand a news article? Fantastic. Those little wins build momentum. They keep you motivated.
Okay, I love that. Small wins, big celebrations, I'm here for it. But even with the positive mindset, there's that ever-present challenge of time, right? Adulting is basically a masterclass in juggling like a million things at once. So how do we actually fit language learning into our already packed schedules?
It's the question, isn't it? I think for me, it's about working smarter, not necessarily harder. So instead of thinking about language learning as this huge chunk of time that you have to find, it's more about these smaller, more manageable, I like to think of them as sprinkles throughout your day.
Sprinkles. Okay, I am very intrigued. Does this involve actual sprinkles?
Sadly, no. No actual sprinkles, although I highly recommend a little treat every now and then. But what I mean is, look for those little pockets of time where you can fit in some English, even just for a few minutes, without totally rearranging your day.
Okay, yeah. Give me some examples.
Okay, so one super easy change is just switching the language settings on your phone to English. You're already spending time on your phone anyway, right? Might as well make it work double duty as a language learning tool.
It's like passively absorbing new vocabulary while you scroll.
Exactly. Another good one, listen to podcasts or audiobooks in English. You can do it on your commute, at the gym, even while you're doing chores around the house. You'd be surprised how much you pick up just by having it on in the background.
So it's a way to make those everyday activities a little more enriching. Love that. Maximizing efficiency. What about pronunciation, though? I will say that's one area where I can get a little self-conscious because some of those English sounds just feel impossible.
Oh, you're definitely not alone there. Pronunciation can be super tricky, especially if your native language has really different sounds and rhythms. But with focused practice and the right techniques, you can totally improve.
Okay, so no magic solutions. But what are some of those effective techniques that you've found? So no magic solutions, but what are some of those effective techniques that you've found? How do we tame those tricky sounds?
Well, one thing that can really help is breaking down those difficult sounds and just practicing them, like by themselves.
Okay, so like tongue drills, basically.
Yeah, kind of. Like, let's say you're having trouble with the th sound, which I know can be a tough one for a lot of people. You'd focus on that specific sound, really listen to how native speakers pronounce it in different words, and pay attention to where your tongue and teeth are. And then just practice it over and over until it feels more natural.
So it's like isolating a muscle group at the gym, but for your tongue.
Exactly. And there's some really great resources online that can help with this. Have you ever seen those IPA charts?
Yeah.
So the IPA, that stands for the International Phonetic Alphabet, and it uses a unique symbol for every sound in a language, which is super helpful for figuring out exactly how to make those sounds that feel unfamiliar.
It's like having a pronunciation roadmap, so you can see where you need to go and how to get there. Okay, but what about grammar? We haven't forgotten about the grammar gremlin, have we?
Definitely not. So we were talking about pronunciation, which of course is key for speaking clearly and being understood. But grammar, that's the backbone, right? It's what lets us take all those sounds and put them together in a way that actually makes sense.
And I think that's where a lot of adult learners, myself included, kind of hit a wall. It's like we can understand the rules in theory, but then to actually use them in a real conversation, it feels impossible.
It's that leap, right? From knowing the rule to just using it naturally without stopping to think about it.
Yes.
If you're enjoying this podcast, don't forget to like the video. Share it with friends who might find it helpful. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss our next video. Let us know in the comments what topic you'd like to hear.
Like, my brain needs a few extra seconds to catch up.
And that's where I think This idea of recognizing patterns comes in. Instead of memorizing individual grammar rules, what if you tried focusing on how native speakers use those structures naturally in real life?
So instead of getting stuck on the why of a grammar rule, I'm looking for the how.
Exactly. And how do you learn those patterns? By being exposed to the language as much as possible, reading, listening to podcasts, watching movies, even just paying attention to conversations around you if you're in an English-speaking environment.
So it's about immersing yourself in the sounds, the rhythms, the way it all flows together.
Yes. And as you encounter those patterns over and over again, they start to sink in. You begin to use them more naturally without even having to think about it.
It's like learning a dance routine. At first, you're thinking about every single step, but then with practice, it just becomes second nature.
I love that analogy. And speaking of practice, we can't forget the most important part of becoming fluent actually speaking.
Yeah, there's no way around it, is there? We've got to actually open our mouths and make those sounds.
You got it. But the good news is there are so many fun ways to practice speaking, even if you don't live in an English-speaking country.
Okay, like what? Tell me more.
Well, have you ever tried those language exchange apps and websites?
Yeah. Those are cool. It's like a language exchange win-win.
Exactly. You get to practice your English, they get to practice your language. You might even make a new friend along the way.
Oh.
And if you're not quite ready to talk to a native speaker, there are always those AI-powered language partners.
Oh, yeah. And those are getting so good. It's amazing. It's almost like talking to a real person these days.
It's true. Technology is pretty incredible. And those AI partners can give you feedback in real time on your pronunciation, your grammar, your vocabulary. It's all in a safe, judgment-free zone too, which is great.
It's like having a personal language tutor, but available 24/7. So cool. Okay, we have covered so much ground today. As we wrap up our deep dive into adult language learning, is there one key takeaway you would want to leave our listeners with?
You know, if you're serious about becoming fluent in English, the most important thing is to just start.
Don't wait.
Don't wait. Don't wait for the perfect time or until you feel completely ready, because honestly, that might never happen, right? And the longer you wait, the easier it is to talk yourself out of it.
It's about taking that first step, no matter how small.
Yes. Download that language app you've been thinking about. Commit to learning 5 new words every day. Listen to a podcast while you're doing the dishes, whatever works for you. Consistency is key, and don't forget to actually enjoy the process.
Learning a new language should be fun. It's about opening doors to new cultures, new connections, new ways of experiencing the world. And that is exciting. Well, that's it for today's deep dive. We hope you feel inspired to continue your language learning journey with confidence and a little bit of curiosity. Until next time, happy learning.